The Monster Hunter Wilds open beta has been running across all platforms from the beginning of November, with early access to PlayStation Plus subscribers on PS5. You get to do the first story mission, go on a hunt against an Alpha Deshaguma, and then it opens up allowing you to hunt in the Windward Plains against Balaharas and Raydaus as well if you want to. With a good few hours under my belt and having tried all of the weapons, of course it's time for an all weapons tier list. If you're looking for an overview of all of the new combos and moves available for all of the weapons, go check that out. And super quickly, the majority of you are returning viewers to the channel, from shorts or otherwise. If you enjoy the videos, do subscribe, and with that said, let's jump in. Starting us off with the poster weapon of the franchise, we've got the Greatsword. A slow, heavy-hitting weapon with big single-strike damage, known for its legendary TCS, the True Charge Slash. This weapon has always been about high risk, high reward. Your attacks are slow, with big wind-ups, but they deliver a big chunk of damage. It appears as though the other charge slashes have been tuned up in the combo, and the TCS has been tuned down some, so now the bulk of your damage isn't necessarily loaded into the TCS anymore. This is still subject to change, but it's what I've observed in the open beta. I'm pretty happy with this new balancing because I felt TCS was way overtuned, and now the other moves in the weapon's toolkit are much more viable, seeing more diverse play from the Greatsword rather than just getting to your TCS and getting a big whack out. You can, however, get into the TCS quite a bit easier now, such as after landing your focus strike against a wound, or by performing your power clash, which it can do because you can guard with a weapon, and even quite fluidly, you can go from an attack to the guard quite nicely. This is true of all guarding blocking weapons in Wilds, a really nice tweak that they've made to the gameplay. We've got the charged offset slash as well, allowing you to repel monsters back if you time the blow. So it really can do everything. It's a great jack of all trades weapon. Feels much more flexible than it used to, way more beginner friendly. All of your charged slashes, including your TCS, can be redirected with your focus aim. It's no longer necessarily this weapon that absolutely demands high monster knowledge. I love these changes to the Greatsword, and I think more players are going to enjoy it for it. This is going in the S tier. Oh boy, here we go. Next up, we've got the fan favorite, the most popular weapon, the Longsword. The most overkitted weapon is back, and it's been, that's right, further overkitted. Your Spirit Blade slashes now respond to your directional inputs, making them quite a modular attack. And once you get up to red gauge, your attacks transform to crimson slashes, dealing more strikes per input with higher damage. Looks very flashy and cool, and incentivizes you to stay in red gauge rather than hopping on the treadmill of getting up to level 3 red gauge, hopping a Spirit Helm Breaker, and then rinse and repeat. That's still the core loop, but you've got a reason to stay in red gauge anyhow. After the Spirit Helm Breaker, you can follow up with another input to unleash this crazy series of red slashes that follows the monster. You don't even need to actually land it. This does actually consume a whole extra spirit gauge level though, so there are pros and cons for it. That said, using your focus strike to pop a wound instantly gives you a spirit gauge level, and you can just hold down R2 to do a spirit charge and go straight into the round slash. So more ways to consume it quicker, but also more ways to build it up faster. You have your amazing defensive evasive capabilities as well with your Foresight slash and your EI special slash the counter one, once more making the Longsword an unstoppable force that is just unfathomably fun. I adore this new direction of incentivizing staying in level 3 red gauge for the crimson slashes. Perhaps these create wounds easier. That would fit with the theme of them being crimson slashes too. Let's not kid anyone, this is crazily overkitted, but it's also mad fun, like you've gotta love it. Of course the Longsword is going in the triple S tier. Up next we have the ever versatile Sword and Shield, what I would consider the ultimate weapon from Monster Hunter World. You have very good mobility with the constant sidestepping and pivoting between your slashes. Your 3-hit combo with Circle is very powerful and can be followed up with the really strong Reaper slash. And we have this funky charge slash that you can do, seeing you wind up the sword and then jump into the monster, carving down its body, which is really brutal. Both the Reaper slash and charge slash can deliver some pretty decent damage and should be core elements of your combo loops. Perfect Rush has returned, but it's much more like the Rise Perfect Rush rather than Worlds. It doesn't finish off with that beautiful latch onto the monster part where you fire yourself back off. Instead, you get vaulted way up into the air insect glaive style, which is fine. I just really like the World's Perfect Rush, and I'm not saying that it has to be as strong as that, because that was way overtuned, one of the most overtuned moves in the game. Make it weaker, but at least have that combo moveset. Your focus strike against a wound sees you latch onto the monster, which you can then vault off as well, so lots of vaulting gameplay, but equally you can just drag your weapon down through it as well so you don't jump up. I was pretty concerned from the weapon overview that they removed a lot of the speed of the weapon, and they kind of have. It sort of checks out, but it's not as bad as I thought as well. The shield bash combo is good too, you should use that as well. All in all, I'm pretty underwhelmed, and sword and shield was one of my mains from World as well, so maybe I'm a little bit harsher on it. It feels like it really demands very high uptime to even just eke out the same damage as other weapons, being really mindful of constantly throwing your Reaper Slash out, which hits really hard. One thing which does bring it in line with the others though, which I wasn't expecting, is just how powerful the shield is. I was fully blocking all of Rey Dao's most powerful attacks. The shield's actually useful on sword and shield now. And of course, because it can block, it can also initiate the power clashes. Not to be overly harsh on it, I did have a lot of fun playing it. It's a cool weapon, I'm going to be playing it some more, but it just doesn't quite have that wow about it that it used to for me. Regrettably, sword and shield is going to go in the B tier. Next up, we've got the dual blade stat bio, an awesome new direction for the weapon here where the archdemon mode is actually useful. When in demon mode, doing your regular non-blade dance attacks will fill up the demon gauge, and when it's maxed out, you enter archdemon mode, which powers you up and gives you access to additional moves. By performing the blade dance, you're able to then go into an offshoot combo string with the demon flurry. You'll then bounce between blade dance to demon flurry and back again, and do this really cool, powerful, flashy combo that looks like a goddamn ninja. One full go consuming half of your full demon gauge. So you've got this really nice new loop now, doing your regular attacks in demon mode to build up your gauge, then consuming it with these powerful blade dance and demon flurry combos. The extremely stylish Attack on Titan Captain Levi's spinning Beyblade of Death, the Heavenly Blade dance, has now been incorporated into the Focus Strike. There's a new perfect evade you can proc by dodging at the last second in demon mode, giving you a buff, powering you up further, giving you access to additional moves with this gorgeous blue glow to you. Very satisfying to pull off and something you're going to want to try to be in as much as possible. The dual blades are feeling really nice, they're very flashy, very cool, deal a ton of damage. It's going to be mega fun for new or returning players. I love that it's retained its beginner friendly qualities as well, that's fantastic. This is an easy, comfortable S tier. Next up, we've got the hammer, when the call to bonk is just too strong. Another one of my mains from both World and Rise. I absolutely adore the hammer, and I was pretty skeptical of what we saw from the weapon overview beforehand. Having played it a bunch, I am happy to put those fears to rest. It feels really nice. They've done away with the power charge. Instead, you've just got one tier of charging attacks, if that makes sense. There's still 3 levels of it with 3 different attacks, but you don't now use the power charge and get another different 3 attacks. Whilst you're charging, you can do a charge step to maneuver yourself around the place. Very reminiscent of the move that you could do in Rise, whilst also maintaining and increasing your charge further. So great for your offense and for your defense as well. In between all of your hits in your regular combos, you can sidestep between and repivot. Great for your mobility and for your continuity of the combos too. The upswing combo finisher is actually an offset attack, and I didn't realize this, but you could hold it down when you get to it, allowing you to better time it as an offset attack against an enemy. Out of your upswing finisher or during your level 3 charge as a cancel, you can go into the new mighty charge, letting go of it immediately for a quick uppercut, or fully charging to level 2 for the mighty charge slam. As far as I can see, the hammer's most powerful single attack, even more so than the Big Bang finisher. And after this, you can go into the spinning bludgeon, which you can go all the way up until the upswing if you like. So it's given you these tools to actually chain your combos together really nicely, really fluidly, for some serious monster concussions. Delicious. The damage is fantastic, it feels really dynamic. Returning hammer users are going to really enjoy it, and it's maintained its beginner friendly approach as well. Something I've always really loved about the hammer is anyone can pick it up and actually perform really well with it. However, it's not for everyone, and it is quite simplistic. It doesn't have this big toolkit to it, and for that reason it's going to just about slide down into the A tier instead of S. Dutas Rise. Next up, we've got the hunting horn, for when you need extra honk with your bonk in order for it to be very strong. This and a handful of other weapons have had complete overhauls. It feels so good, this wonderful blend of World and Rise with some extra added Wilds juice. The first thing to notice, you can place at will an echo bubble on the floor, up to 3 of them at a time, to give you a buff and to resonate when you play notes or performances, which are additional hits essentially. I did used to think that there was a damage over time to monsters standing in it, but I don't think this is the case. During the actual placing of the echo bubble, you can also store up to 3 notes. At least that's what I've observed when I've tried to do it. Could be 4, might be more. Your performance attacks still respond to a directional input when you do the first one, but now all of your encores are the same quick forward performance attack. In between your melodies that you've got stocked up, you can also do performance beats for some extra hits to overall make your whole performance moments more damaging, and of course go crazy with the echo bubble damage too. Your focus strike also lets you store up notes, this time even more, so definitely utilize that when the monster's wounded just to store up some melodies, maybe some echo wave blunts or whatever, to then go absolutely ham on it afterwards. It also has an offset attack in the form of a melody, which behaves in a different way to the other melodies that won't automatically play out during a performance. You have to do the specific offset melody input for it, which you can then hold down to time your attack to repel the monster. I'm not exaggerating when I say this might be the new highest DPS weapon in the game. It's crazy. So nice to see blunt damage getting so much love and such an improvement. It's honking hours now, friends. Wild's Hunting Horn is of course going into the triple S tier. Are you crazy? The ultimate defense is back. Next up, we've got the Lance. We have a plethora of changes here, all of which I think are absolutely excellent for the weapon. Notably, they've removed the counter guard entirely, opting instead for an automatic shield bash counterattack out of your regular guard. The previous counter guard input now puts you directly into the power guard. There are two new combo finishes you can do now out of your mid thrust and high thrust: the triple thrust attack for a powerful triple jabbing attack, or the charged counter, which puts you in a charging state, which if you release at the point of a monster attacking, so activating a guard point, powers up and unleashes this double charge counter thrust. Probably the Lance's single most powerful attack. Out of your power guard, you can also do a payback thrust, which I believe does more damage depending on how much damage you just received under the guard. I could be wrong. And of course, because the Lance can block, you've got access to the power clash too. Not forgetting the fantastic mobility that comes with all of your guard dash maneuvers, maintaining offense whilst having excellent defense. Like with all of the weapons in Wilds, it's got this fantastic fluidity to it. Everything feels so connected and so dynamic. They've really thought about this. It's amazing to see. Lance is absolutely insane here. It can output crazy amounts of damage, all whilst, as ever, allowing you to stay right in the front lines of the fight. Face to face, toe to toe chatter to Cabra. Another fantastic addition is in between your thrusting combo attacks, you can take up one of the three inputs for a very powerful wide sweep attack. So if you use it in place of mid thrust 2, you'll then go into mid thrust 3, for example. So good, highly modular, very powerful. This thing is just cranking out hits non-stop. I can't wait to get better at all of the blocking, the perfect guards, the power guards, the charge counter guard pointing. Lance for me is an easy S tier. Oh boy, shields up, Iron Breakers. Next we've got the Gunlance. This thing has had a complete overhaul. Oh my goodness, it's insane. Like with all blocking weapons in Wilds, you're able to get into your guard much easier than you could before. Now guarding is viable on weapons that it never really was before, including Gunlance. You can bob around the place using your shelling attacks for mobility whilst you're attacking, which then lets you follow up straight into a moving wide sweep, a gap closing frontal horizontal slice, which you'll probably recognize from the slap lance combo with the overhead smash into the wide sweep. It's the same one, but you can do it from here as well. It can be followed up with a worm stake cannon or the new worm stake full blast, unloading all of your shelling and then hitting them with a worm stake cannon, followed by another one, the multi worm stake full blast. This new combo is absolutely nuts. It's so powerful and crazy fun. Perfect guarding allows you to retaliate immediately with an overhead smash, feeling very satisfying in linking up with your other combos really nicely. And of course, as you're able to block, you can initiate power clashes with this weapon. You're able to hold down your shelling to charge it up and just full burst them all out if you want to. Your Wyvern's Fire is back as well. It's as powerful as ever. You've got 2 goes with it, each time going on cooldown afterwards. It just feels so fun. They've made this so good. Even if you've never played Gunlance before, maybe even especially if you've never played Gunlance before, you've got to give this thing a spin. Gunlance is of course an easy triple S tier. Next up, we've got one of the transforming weapons, which has got to have been an inspiration for the trick weapons in Bloodborne. We've got the Switch Axe. This one's had a big overhaul as well, and it's feeling super good. The Axe Mode core combo now has this beautiful finisher, the Spiral Burst Slash, which looks dope, feels good, and deals really good damage. It also builds a ton of switch gauge. Very modular, high mobility attacks just baked into the weapon, be it your forward slash, your forward overhead slash, or even your fade slash. Getting the heavy slam buff now increases the overall damage of the weapon, not just part break, and increases the fill up rate of the switch gauge as well. Sword combos are feeling as sick as ever, getting further powered up when you've filled up the amped gauge, adding the additional file effects to your strikes. Zero sum discharge seems to be gone. You're no longer latching on and doing that attack. Do let me know if it's still in and I just missed it, but you still have the element discharge. With the addition of the unbridled slash, this really cool powerful new attack, or when amped up, the full release slash. So epic, flashy, and powerful. Personally, I think it's so so much more fun than doing constant back-to-back zero-sum discharges. So you have this really nice loop of in axe mode building up your switch gauge from your regular attacks and expending it in sword form with your sword strikes and your sword abilities. The switch axe also has a fantastic offset attack, which is actually pretty easy to time compared to some of the others. Feels like the great sword one, it's quite generous. Oh, and the sword form also has like a sword parry as well, it's whatever. Bro, this thing is so sick. I am not even a switch axe main at all from World or Rise, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be playing the crap out of this in Wilds. It's just feeling so good. Switch axe is another super obvious triple S tier. Here we've got another transforming weapon which also could have been inspiration for the Bloodborne trick weapons, the Charge Blade. We've got some really interesting changes to the weapon over here. Now your files can actually be double charged, giving you a lot more bang for your buck with the file usage, and is essentially something you're always going to want to do rather than using the single charge files. When storing them, you can hold this down to power up your shield directly now, but if you want to go and do the old way, you can still do that. From here you can also charge your sword with a condensed elemental slash, giving your sword strike the extra file damage. Another pivotal change is now when you activate Power Axe, commonly referred to as Savage Axe, it actually halves your file consumption, no longer being just this alternative playstyle, but now an essential mode that you really want to go in. The kicker is you can't activate it at will anymore. You can only activate it after a perfect guard, a power clash, or with your mount finisher. The element discharge combo has had a huge glow up as well, with the addition of a new amped element discharge follow-up after the amped element discharge. A very powerful, very crunchy new combo, which now with the new Savage Axe is consuming barely any files as you're doing it. You can at this point, if you want to, follow up with the SAED or after a perfect guard as well. So you still have access to that, but just not through the same pathways as you used to. And it's still very crunchy, but the element discharge combo now is just so damn good. But then with double charged files, SAED is as good as ever too, so you've got options. Holding down the relative attack button with Savage Axe allows you to do the extra ticks of damage as well. This isn't automatically applied like in World, it's more like the Rise one. Again, we've got another guarding weapon, you can go into your guards much smoother here, and you've got access to the power clash too. I absolutely love these changes, I think they're fantastic improvements to the weapon. I do think overall you have to jump through more hoops though, which I think a lot of players will find as quite a big negative. I'm going to be putting Charge Blade into the S tier, but it could just as easily be the A tier or the triple S. Next is the pole vaulting aerial weapon, the Insect Glaive. Some pretty spectacular changes here, one of them being that now you can get your essences whilst attacking. By attacking whilst in focus mode, not doing your focus strikes, I mean your regular attacks. Your Kinsect fires out and mimics the attack that you did, attempting to harvest extracts at the same time and then immediately bring them back to you. This changes the dynamic of things so much. It felt a lot more involved rather than standing there aiming your Kinsect, firing it off at all the different parts, which you can still do. And now your reticule will even highlight which essence you're going to get depending on what you're aiming at. They've unburdened the whole process of harvesting extracts, which was a bit of a pain in the ass before. It kind of still is, but less so. They've also removed the infinite bounce loop and changed the pathway for the descending thrust. Now when you've got red essence, you have to hold down circle as you're vaulting up, releasing it after it's charged to then initiate the descending thrust. Doing this or charging up your strong descending slash on the ground with all three essences allows you to unleash a really cool attack with this big follow-up rising spiral slash. Very reminiscent of like a Final Fantasy Limit Break style move. It's so cool. Launching into the air with a flurry of powerful slashes from you and your Kinsect going absolutely haywire, consuming all three of your essences as well, creating this new really interesting loop for the Insect Glaive. But all is not lost. Your Kinsect is able to harvest extracts during this attack as well, often bringing back 2 of them immediately anyhow. Not only that, but your focus strike against a wound immediately gets you all 3 essences as well. A fantastic and easy way to get fully powered up at a click of a finger. Your various ground combos are still really nice and strong, especially with your red essence, and you can do the fun stuff with your Kinsect like sending them over, releasing dust, etc. I absolutely love these changes to the Insect Glaive. I think they've improved the weapon so much. A ton of fun and a fantastic loop which sees you expending resources but gaining them back really quickly too. Quite reminiscent of how the new longsword feels as well. An easy S tier, but if I had to deduct anything, it's because the descending thrust is a bit awkward now, and we've lost the aerial bounce. I know that's bummed people out too. On to the ranged weapons. bowguns, next up we've got the light bowgun. Yo dog, I heard you want to rapid fire your rapid fire rapidly. The huge change with LBG is the addition of the brand new meter, the new mode it goes into, rapid fire mode. When activated, some ammos, not all, will rapidly fire multiple shots, dealing significantly more damage. You also have excellent mobility in this mode, strafing whilst firing, doing your sidestep reload, and the rapid fire chaser shots hit really hard too. Once you've expended your rapid fire gauge, you can replenish it by landing your regular attacks, with your chaser shots replenishing more and dealing more damage, but they're slower to set up. That's the new loop with LBG, it's sick. You have access to a special ammo, in this case a Wyvern Blast, placing it on the ground which procs any time an attack is dealt. What really surprised me here is the focus strike. It turns the weapon into a grenade launcher. Cool, awesome. But when you're using this against wounds, and you should only really be using your focus strikes against wounds, otherwise they're effectively useless for all weapons, it deals an absolute massive ton of damage per wound that's active on the monster, not even necessarily expending them all, depending on where the actual grenade hits. In terms of damage, this might even be the strongest focus strike in the game. It's really powerful. You've got this really fun loop with high sustained damage the entire time, you're at a safe distance firing from mid-range, and you've got excellent mobility too. They really gave LBG a glow up and separated it from HBG and bow drastically. I'm going to put light bowgun in the S tier. Next up, we've got the tank cosplay, the heavy bowgun. First thing to note here is that the shield mod has been integrated into the weapon. Heavy bowguns now can just auto guard, and manually guard if you want to as well, which of course means you've got access to a power clash too. The weapon keeps you much further away than LBG to be in effective range, further differentiating itself between the two bowguns. And this also comes with a special gauge too, the Wyvern Ignition gauge. In ignition mode, the weapon turns into a machine gun, where you hold down R2 to continuously fire and the power increases as you continue to hit the target. Very reminiscent of the Wyvern Heart from the previous games, I believe it was called. When you've activated ignition mode, you also get access to an offset attack, the Wyvern Counter Ignition, which can be charged up to increase its power too. When back in your standard mode, your attacks will replenish your ignition gauge, creating that super fun loop where you're bouncing between the two different modes, encouraging you to use them, something we're seeing with all of these weapons with this new dynamic. It's super cool. I mean, this thing's kind of crazy. It's got an auto block, you can manually block and activate perfect guard that way. You've got your power clash, you've got offset attacks in ignition mode, and it's a long range weapon too. Very fun and has a diverse toolkit, but it just doesn't shine for me like the others. I'm going to be putting heavy bowgun in the B tier. Last but definitely not least, we've got the bow. This is up there with things like Hunting Horn and Gunlance, with having been completely reworked. First of all, the coatings are now integrated into the weapon's toolkit. It is not a separate consumable that you bring out with you. Applying coatings takes a segment of your new meter, the trick arrow gauge. The amount of coatings is also significantly reduced, making it a much more active, dynamic part of the weapon. You apply it, you use it up, and 8 goes. You've got to think about getting it back on again. Much more involved. You can also consume some of your gauge to fire a tracer arrow at the monster, causing your arrows to home in on the part, deal additional damage I believe, and will eventually cause the tracer arrow to explode for additional damage too. Landing your regular attacks will replenish your trick arrow gauge, as will performing the bow's perfect evade, the discerning dodge, which also replenishes your stamina by the way. Yeah, they fixed the bow's stamina management. Arc shot is now pretty damn useful, as well as causing damage over time within a small AoE. It also sticks explosive arrows onto the monster, acting as additional targets during your focus strike to deal more damage, also proccing additional hits for 1000 dragons too. It is just absolutely insane. You've got this goddamn heat-seeking tracker, excellent sustained damage at mid-range, fantastic mobility, including that new jumping attack which is really strong, very stylish and satisfying, perfect dodging, replenishing your stamina and trick arrow gauge. They got all of the pain points of bow and fixed them. Like the other iterations of bow in the other titles, this is going to be an absolute menace and deal tons of damage. Even if ranged isn't usually your thing, you definitely need to give this weapon a go. I am of course putting the bow in the triple S tier. There you have my completed weapon tier list for Monster Hunter Wilds, based off the open beta build that we've been playing. How does this match up to yours? Let me know in the comments what you would rank all of the 14 weapons, or just the ones that you've played. As mentioned at the start, the majority of you are returning viewers to the channel, from shorts or my other guides and overviews. If you enjoy the videos, do subscribe. If you want to hop into our open sessions for the various Monster Hunter games, come and join the Discord and join the live streams over on Twitch. I will leave these links for you in the description. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you in the Forbidden Lands.